Hey, welcome to the Runaways podcast. My name is Cody. Today we are going to talk about all the draft sets and we are going to rank them. See what is the best, what is the worst of all of the draft sets that we've ever done. I think some of us know how this is probably going to go, but it'll be fun to experiment. However, I am joined today with a couple of people who have done well in draft, namely Dan and Lucas. And Pheano, you've all topped events that had draft as the primarily the most, important part of the tournament, as we've often said. But I'll start with
Harold,
Lucas.
Take Harold.
Yeah, that's a good one. Actually, two events for you that draft was super important. So I figured this is a good group to sit down and actually rank out all of the drafts, especially since we have Rosetta coming soon, which will be a new addition, kind of in the new wave of Fab, where they've definitely gotten much better at making draft sets. But Lucas, I'll start with you. How has your week been? We're still kind of on a break from most Fab stuff, just kind of waiting around for Tampa. But how's your week been?
It's been good. I haven't been playing a whole lot of Fab. I've been trying to break a little bit when I can, kind of force myself to stay home instead of going to armories. But once Rosetta comes out, I'm going to be right back in the swing of it. I'm really excited to toy with some of the new heroes and hopefully see a certain ninja get some spanks on the ban list, but we'll see. Till then,
Why doesn't need more nerfs? He's unplayable.
Yeah, until then, I'll just chill. But I am excited to talk about draft today because I'm really excited about draft.
Sweet. And Pheano, welcome back again. I see you're playing with your cards. Are they anything good? Oh, I don't know if you want to just continually shuffle those. Those do not feel like the type of cards that you should just be continually shuffling over and over again. Seeing as they are, for the people who don't know, he just like turns around and they're like all Marvel angels.
Whoa! And an artist proof.
And an artist proof.
And
okay. So how's your week been?
And my Luminar. Also a little bit of a break from playing Fab, but I'm still doing stuff with Fab and streaming. Just did a restream of the casting of the PT. That was pretty fun. I know some of you guys joined me for a bit of that. Been just kind of working on content, did some Patreon article stuff of like write-ups for Prism. I was very surprised how much I actually had to say about the Zen matchup. It was like 3,000 characters. I was like, oh, I thought this was just flip coins to the matchup. There was actually a lot of moving parts there. And then I'm just working on some other content right now for just get into that content grind because we've just had so many months in a row of grinding playing the game that just the content side just kind of slipped away from me.
Sweet. And Dan, I know you and I have been actually playing games because we might have a tournament this weekend that we go to that's like a Realm 5K. So how's your week been? How's your practice been?
It's been nice. So I really didn't practice until Sunday and Monday. So before that, I did the thing I do after every long testing cycle, which is I spend an entire week just grinding an action RPG. This time it's Diablo 2 Classic. So I've just been spinning around with my whirlwind barbarian, having a good time. But then I got to the end of the week, I'm like, what's that?
Spin to win.
Yep, spin to win. But then we got to the end of the week, I'm like, I need to play card games. So I looked at the Vinsa deck and the Riptide deck we talked about last week. I was like, these look pretty cool. I'll try these out. And I really like Riptide, so I jammed that at my armory. Speaking of which, we had 3 new players at armory, and they were all playing armory decks, and they had a great time. And I was like, where did you guys come from? This is amazing.
I've had the same experience in my locals.
Yep. They all just like randomly picked the same day to be like, this is the first day I'll play Flesh and Blood in person, and they bought the armory decks, and it went great.
Did they like the armory decks? Like, how did they feel about them?
I didn't get a chance. I played with them like the early rounds. Like I played one of them round 1. I talked to one before the event. I didn't get to talk to them after the event. So I'll find out next week what they thought. But it seemed to go well. The Azalea deck I think is really well constructed. I got to play against that. And it becomes like very clear very quickly that you're just supposed to like use Azalea's ability every turn. Play a pump, look at your top card, do the ability, do the thing. It's like very I don't know, I kind of intuitive, I think. The equipment's tricky. I think the equipment's a little too tricky for like your first couple games, but once you like figure out the combos, I think it seems pretty solid.
Cool. I have been trying to figure out what I want to play if I go to the Realm event, which is weird to say like if I go, because normally in any other format I would be like going 100% of the time, but format's kind of meh, and I don't know what to play. Like I know what I want to play. My heart of hearts, I want to bring Enigma and be happy, but I won't be happy if I bring Enigma because the game I'm just not allowed to play the game. So without further ado, we actually have a tier list. We're going to tier rank all of the draft formats that we've had so far. So let's go ahead and start our tier list. The tier list is missing bright lights, it seems to be, but we could just say one of these is bright lights. Let's go ahead and I guess start with an easy one. Arcane Rising. What do we?
Can we do a quick ground roll?
Yeah.
Are we doing these? I guess it should be like in context of Flesh and Blood draft sets, right? Like,
yes.
How they rank
otherwise
each other, not like this is the perfect draft set that could exist, kind of thing.
Yes, they have to be within only Fab, because then almost everything would be D if that was the case. Because a lot of games have really good drafts. Yeah.
That's generous.
Look, we're being nice today. It only goes to D, so no, not even gonna have an F tier here. It'd be very nice,
actually.
Yeah, it's all positive vibes. But yeah, it's just within relative to themselves and what we've played in Flesh and Blood.
Sure.
Okay, so easy start. Arcane Rising. Where do we put Arcane Rising? Has anyone actually played Arcane Rising?
I've drafted it like 3 times, but that was like 2 years ago. I really want to revisit the set because when I played it and what everyone says it's the worst, it's undraftable. And I don't disagree, but I'd like to play it like 10 times and figure it out. But right now, it's for sure like the worst.
Yeah, I've drafted I
haven't drafted.
I haven't drafted it either.
5 times. It's Azalea and Kano are just like not playable, and Dash isn't really playable.
But if you get Chamber, you just like win, right?
Yeah, if you get
like
Chamber,
it's unbeatable. You just
Chamber,
4 people and they fatigue.
Yeah, there was some ridiculous stat. There was like a calling or like a early pro quest when Arcane Rising draft was a thing, and like 8 out of 8 of the sealed pools that made top 8 were Induction Chamber decks.
Gross.
Yeah, it was like, or like all the undefeateds day 1 had it or something like that. So yeah, Induction Chamber just wins you the draft format by itself. But yeah, like Azalea and Kano are just like not real heroes.
I wonder if like 6-pack draft or something crazy would fix it.
Maybe Azalea is just not good because like she just doesn't have good arrows or good pumps, and the format lends itself to fatigue pretty easily, so she just can't win any games ever. She's really bad. And then Kano's just the same thing. You just like AB is free and your damage sucks, and there's no like good Wounded Bull generics, so no Storm Striders, so you just lose every game.
Okay, I will take the collective opinion because I've never drafted it, but it does not seem super good. Okay, let's do an interesting one next, since that one was far less interesting. Let's do Tales of Aria. I'll give someone else the first thought here.
We'll move things around at the end too, right?
Yep.
Okay.
I did not enjoy that set very much. I've heard differing opinions from my experience, so I can only say my anecdotal experience with the drafting this set. But my experience was a lot of the times it was you're either just drafting Oldhim or Briar, or you're getting the dregs of Alexi deck, and you're fighting for your life trying to win with that. But then a lot of the times also the draft then devolved into people just fighting over all the elemental cards, and you just getting whatever for the class cards afterwards. It was just like it felt like the intent of how you're supposed to draft it was very similar to MST, where there's a lot of different ways that you can navigate the heroes into, like, oh, I could draft, my Briar deck 3 different ways. I could go mono earth, I could go mono lightning, or I can do a hybrid both element deck. And like, there's just so many different ways I could draft it. But the way that the drafts played out for me, anecdotally again, that did not feel like the case. It just felt like a lot of people were just whatever pile decks a lot of the times.
I was a big Lexi believer, and I've done a lot of work with Lexi decks. I've been crushed multiple weeks in a row at Armory by Lexi decks. So I think it was a little more dynamic than you're giving credit, but I don't know. I think at the time I would have given Aria like when Aria just came out, I would have given it like a solid like B+. Because I do think it was the best draft set we had. Now I would probably put it in C tier. It's like fine, right? Like it's draftable. It's got some like a little nuance to the drafting process. You're not like screwed if you like pick wrong in the beginning.
You guys are so soft in this format. Like I think there's two decks. Lexi is not a real deck. You can be a 1 of Lexi, you'll 2-1. Good luck. That's all the stats show that as well as all the tournaments. And I've never lost to a Lexi in draft.
You gotta come to after.
I did. I won. What are you talking about? I won Highlander. Let's go.
Was it draft?
Yes. I beat Fang.
We did a draft event?
Yes. I beat Fang. Yuanchi going out. I won that event. What are you talking about?
Wait, what was it?
It was Highlander draft.
Like
it was like an RTN, yeah.
Was I there?
I think so, but I can't remember you.
I don't
if you were or not.
All.
Yeah.
Right?
That's it. But what you're saying is how I felt. It was like you're an idiot if you're not playing these 2 decks, I felt like.
And if you draft Ice, Oldhim, you're dumb. You just draft Earth, Oldhim with fatigue cards, and you grab the healing sigil spell, and you just like can never lose to anything. You just play a fatigue match. It's like I love playing the format because I enjoyed playing the deck, but it's a terrible draft. It's a 2 set draft, so there's only 2 heroes because the Lexi's a joke. I mean, to the point where in my Nationals draft that I 6-0'd it, but in my Nationals draft, we had a Voltaire table because no one was willing to try and go Lexi. I eventually had to play against the Lexi player who took the Voltaire, and because he went 2-1.
I thought.
Yeah, no, that's what he didn't play it. He played Shiver. He didn't play the Voltaire.
I think the format evolved a lot though after like competitive season. Like if you revisit it, I think it got a lot deeper once people like figured out how to actually play Lexi. And
you know what's funny?
Never played it again after.
You know, we actually played it again at what was that tournament that we were at afterwards? You know who won that? Me on Fatigue Oldhim again.
It's just good at drafting, man. Like whatever.
Yeah, I think I'm closer to Dan than you guys. Voltaire is an interesting card, actually. I think that card is really good, but it's pretty much only good like pack 1, pick 1 if you're 1 of 2 Lexi. So it's like not actually good most of the time. But like when it works, it is pretty solid. You just need a billion arrows. And I think that the Lexi is like a real hero, but it's not great. I think the fact that you can 2-1 with Lexi means that like since it's correct to draft her some of the time, there's like some area there. Like a lot of Briar Oldhim decks would be 1-2s, but you can take Lexi and probably 2-1, but you can spike 3-0s. Like it definitely happens.
But that's like you're fighting for your life to get the 2-1.
That's being 1 of Lexi.
I think it depends. If you're in the open Lexi seat, I think you can 2-1 pretty consistently.
As a 1 of Lexi, then you can. Yeah.
Anyway,
no, I think it's more like you could be 2nd or 3rd Lexi or 2nd Lexi, but if you're in the right like elements, like if you're getting lightning cards, your deck's going to be gas. If you're in the Ice Lexi seat, I don't know. Good luck.
I think I'm signing up for side events if I end up 1 of 3.
I think the Briar deck was interesting because there was a lot of ways to draft it. Like the Ball Lightning
really cool.
Like Ball Lightning deck was a real version of that. Then there was just like normal lightning stuff with like arcane direct damage finishers was like a very interesting build of that as well. And then there was the Earth build that was
go tall.
It was go tall and go recursion in order to try and beat Oldhim, which was like the only real struggle that Oldhim would have in that format. As long as they
drafting that version.
Yeah, that version was a lot of fun. I thought drafting Oldhim and drafting Briar was great. And if there was a 3rd hero, I think it would have actually been a pretty interesting and good draft set. It's just like they just didn't put a 3rd hero in the box.
I don't agree.
Are we in agreement
though
on
What's
C?
the ranking? Yeah, it's for sure.
Oh yeah, it's C. It's 100% C.
Draftable.
Yeah,
like D is undraftable to me. C is draftable. Like it's fine. You'll have fun probably.
if there was a third hero, it would 100% be.
I really enjoyed the games. Like I did not like the draft portion. I thought the games were very good.
I mean, that's how most of these are going to go, right?
And it had like the problem with the draft portion. I feel like it kind of started either here or Monarch. I felt like I was very on rails for a good portion of the draft. I'm not making real decisions anymore. And this has been like a theme in a lot of sets to me, at least. Like it's like small decisions, like, oh, I got to fill out this checkbox for my deck. Like, oh, I found one of the few cards that I'm missing from my deck to make it function. But by and large, a lot of the cards that you're taking are just like, I'm just taking best card and pack for my deck. I'm just taking best card and pack for my deck. Oh, I'm missing this card. Okay, back to best card and pack for my deck. So I'm not like making meaningful choices.
I do think this set was like the first time we had like a semblance of archetypes to kind of
well, Welcome to Wraith
dispute what you're saying a little bit.
Welcome to Wraith had like 3 archetypes of hero, but nobody like really drafted it. But like
sure.
That
Lucas, before we move off of Tales, did you have anything else to say about it?
Nope.
No. Okay. I still to this day enjoy drafting the set. I just don't think it's that great of a draft set. It's more of just like a comfort draft for me. Like I really enjoy doing the draft.
I think so too for me.
Yeah. Okay. Next one here that I'm curious to hear about. What about Outsiders?
Oh, this is going to be controversial.
What about
just for the 4 of us?
That's what I love about it.
It's like straight D tier for me.
Lucas,
I have a weird bias against it, so I'm gonna. What you guys respond, I'm gonna think about what I actually think about the set, other than just like the feel.
Let's talk about the overall of this draft set for the people who don't remember. For Outsiders, it's what Azalea, Riptide,
Katsu,
Azuri,
Katsu,
Benji.
Yeah, Benji. Lucas, are you still on the Benji train with me on this one, or have you reverted?
I did. I actually did this exercise a few months ago. I like sat down. Okay. I looked through all my results. I was like, I drafted a bunch of this set with my locals, a bunch online, a bunch of friends, whatever. I looked at my win rate with Benji. I'm like 90%. I have an unreasonable bias in this format because I don't really know how to evaluate
every time I play it.
Yeah, because the thing is, like, I will say a lot of people at the Pro Tour showed up and a lot of the teams had different opinions on the format, which I think is a good sign. Like, there were people who were 3-0ing consistently with Katsu, right? The Wolfpack was doing really well drafting just Katsu a lot of the time. There were people doing pretty well with Assassin. There were some Ranger decks that did well. I know there was like a 40-card Riptide that 3-0'd day one and just apparently just like rolled everybody. And then there was like Noah's deck from day one that was just like actually like win conditionless Riptide, and he like managed to 3-0 as well.
One of the worst decks I've ever seen.
I know going into the event, Dan, Yuanji, and I, and maybe some other people on the team were pretty high on Riptide. Dan and Yuanji both drafted Riptide.
High in that, like, we felt it was playable when other people thought it was not playable.
Yeah, and then yes. And then like Dan and UNG both like drafted him and went 0-3 or something like that.
But that was like before we had actual pack collation. So it was like a little bit of self-juicing. I was like, depending on cards that show up in every booster box.
Sure.
That like just didn't show up. So then I had no win con. And I literally lost all those games by 1 health and 1 card. I was just like, this is all my deck can output. I don't know what I'm supposed to do.
Yeah, I think I think though the problem with Outsiders, it's really hard to evaluate because of the Pro Tour that it was at. Like every major team had different thoughts. Like I know Blue Pitch was higher on Assassin than I was. Or I don't know if it was actually Blue Pitch at the time, but Alan Lau and whoever Alan was drafting with. And I just like that Pro Tour kind of sucked coalition wise. Like everybody you would talk to, they were like, yeah, mine was just scuffed. Like my day one draft, I had like 5 spring loads by pick, like end of pack 2. And then like I was passing them at the end. And it's like, that's just very strange.
Like only one class would get their equipment to show up.
Yeah,
like,
that was a big thing I heard about was like everybody. Yeah, they're like, we got 4 of this class equipment and I didn't see a single equipment in my whole class.
I remember running into that for Uprising also, the equipment problem.
Yeah, I think Outsiders belongs in like B, C tier. I actually think that the games were really interesting And the thing is, like, all the classes were draftable, which is better than like the other formats that we've talked about so far, along with some other later. Whatever your thoughts on like Ranger are, it was draftable. It had some good matchups, right? Azalea was pretty good into Benji. Some Riptide decks just destroyed Assassin. So like it has a place in the format. But it's not anything special, right? I mean, it's still, you have to lock in by pick 4 or 5, probably. Like, you don't have a whole lot of archetypes. The games are fine, but they're nothing special. I think it's like the B tier if we're gonna like have even tiers, if we're not just putting everything in C and D tier. But otherwise, I mean, you could put it top of C, but I think it belongs in mid B.
I wanna like probably expand the range out a little bit, because I think Benji was, so I forced Benji only in this format. I got, I think I got second at like a Battle Harden. I did well at Pro Tour doing this strategy, but that was a tournament strategy. That was like, that's outside of what the actual draft is, because Benji was not, in my opinion, the strongest class. It was just that no one drafted Benji. Everyone just kind of said it wasn't very good, and you just got all your cards for free, and it was like incredibly powerful when that happened. So it was like a great tournament strategy for that draft.
It's also,
you also
like,
needed less cards because you only needed the 30 for your deck to function. Where other decks like kind of wanted to fat deck a bit.
Yeah, I think the biggest advantage that Benji got was like, if your deck was cracked, you could still have just like this cracked deck that like does better things than everybody else. But if your deck was like terrible, you just like spike half your wins anyway. Like, your win percentage is just like up by 10%, because some of the times like you just go first, you deal 6 unblockable, and then like they like stumble one turn, you do like 4 more unblockable, and then they're just like dead 4 turns later because you just like give 3 cards, throw a 0 for 2.
Yeah, so take out the dice roll from the equation.
Yep.
I usually don't know what the order is.
I agree with that. I will say in our internal drafts, in our internal draft games where we had people who pretty much knew what they were doing draft-wise, Arachne won almost all of them. That was our internal data. However, Arachne was heavily overdrafted by the general public, so it was really hard to go into. So we just like would do the Benji thing. But I think Arachne was very, very strong if it's drafted in the right amount. It was probably the best deck.
Had kind of scuffed internal testing though, because like we had Sean Yang is like the only person on the whole team who like actually drafted Azalea like ever. Like, we were all just convinced that hero's unplayable. And so of course it makes sense that all of our internal drafts that we did Benji, we felt like fine. And then we just beat everybody else, because like Azalea is like the worst matchup for Benji if she has like a good deck with a lot of pumps. But like nobody's playing it, internally. So like, of course Benji looks good. Of course Arachne looks good when nobody knows how to draft one of the heroes.
Yeah, my draft strategy was like, I'm going to hedge between Arachne Benji because they share a lot of cards. And then I'm going to kind of see which one looks more lucrative from the seed I'm in. But then it always ended up being Benji. And you kind of touched on it a second ago, Dan, the play draw in the format. This is like my biggest problem with the format. The play draw was ridiculously lopsided. I felt like a lot of games ended instantly if I lost the die roll. But Benji, that didn't feel like that was the case very frequently, because you got your free value. You'd get your like 4 points of chip damage, turn 0, and still get a set. And then you'd have that evasion at the end of the game to try to close. So you didn't just like lose by going first.
Yep, I will say it's another one of those draft sets where you had to lock in by like 4 or 5, even though they tried to make it not that way. But because there were so many heroes, it actually made it a little bit harder, I think, because you could go past 30 at this point. You just had to lock in at like 3, 4, 5, almost every time, which has made forcing a lot more better. So a lot more better, made it better.
Yeah, the closest thing to staying open you could do is like force Assassin or Ranger, and then if you ended up exactly Benji, it was fine because you only needed like 30 cards.
Yeah,
but like you couldn't like pivot into anything else.
Yeah, and so because of that,
we never talked.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say we never talked on a letter, but finish your thought.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. So because of all of that together, where do we think we should rate?
I will say my locals love Outsiders. I think it's an easy C+ though. Like, the drafting process was not that good.
I agree.
I think it's like the top tier of playable.
Yeah, I think if we put this one in C, then nobody really deserves. Then we'll have like 2 sets above it.
Correct.
I
maybe 3.
Like,
No, maybe
Like,
4.
if-
No,
if-
this is let's
Okay.
keep
No,
rolling.
you're
Let's
right.
keep
Looking
rolling.
at it now, I think it's
Let's
okay.
keep rolling. Let's keep rolling.
Like if I was making the tier list for myself, we'd end up with one deck in S tier, a deck in A tier, and then everything else in F. Like I just don't like a lot of the draft sets in this game, so I'm like very low on a lot of the sets. But I think like the way that we're reasoning through the tier list, C makes sense.
It's a shame too because I feel like the Mistveil adjustments would like save all of these sets.
I agree.
Which
It's
is
also
good
the
going
card
forward.
design. Like the card design in that set lent itself. Do we want to jump to Mistveil now?
Sure.
S
We might
tier.
as well.
Wow, we all agree. Phenomenal.
The card design in this set's phenomenal.
Put it up
Like it's
there.
absolutely knocked out of the park.
I think powerful blues are like a huge deal.
They did what Aria was trying to do of like you have this talent slot that makes it feel like you can go a bunch of different routes, but then you actually get to do that thing. You actually get a lot of modality of how you want to build your deck. But the other thing that like outsiders felt like a failure in this aspect of they were trying to have this like you can stay open with the generic slot. Like the generics and the dual class cards were relatively good in that set. And it felt like they were trying to push towards a strategy of staying open, but then it failed. You like you said, you're supposed to kind of force in that set, otherwise you can train wreck. That wasn't really the case with this set. You can actually stay open for quite a while, and I think that was because the delta between the power level of the class cards versus the non-class cards was much closer. So you're not like as heavily punished by taking these cards early versus late. So like you actually get to make decisions during your draft because of how you get to stay open versus force. But then also it has the aspect of how you navigate the, like you get to go, okay, what do I already have? How do I draft cards to synergize with these to get the most value out of the cards that I have? And it just doesn't feel like you do that in a lot of other sets. It's just like, yep, just do the number on my card. Like I don't really have a lot of ways to extract value from my cards. To just play your cards.
Yeah, I had a good thought. I was like driving home from work like an hour and a half ago, and I was trying to figure out how I would like explain my thoughts on part the Mistveil and Bright Lights, which is a one we'll talk about soon, I'm sure. But I really like the drafting in Bright Lights, and I thought that the gameplay was a little bit medium. And I like articulated that I think Bright Lights, in general, I think Magic Draft is better than Flesh and Blood Draft. I think most people agree with that. Bright Lights feels like I'm
not the
drafting.
gameplay.
Yeah. Bright Lights feels like I'm just drafting Magic, where like I get to stay open a while. I have to have certain cards for certain matchups. I'm doing like very Magic-y things, it feels, while I'm drafting. And then the games also feel like Magic, where they're super swingy. Bombs win games by themselves. There's like a couple failure points that are super high variance, and it's not a whole lot of fun because the other time, you know, you're playing like Teklo Mirror or whatever. It's not super interesting. You're just doing the thing. But Mistveil feels like Flesh and Blood Draft perfected, or if not perfected, done very, very well. Like Bright Lights feels like I'm drafting Magic, which is better than most Fab sets, but Mistveil is a great Fab set. Like you're allowed to stay open. You're allowed to do powerful things that are unique in Fab. There's a lot more synergy than we've seen in the past, which is something that other games don't do very well. And I thought this set did phenomenally, right? Like double card synergies, 3-card synergies, archetype synergies, all in one. You look at a card like Tidal Surge. Like this card is really, really powerful with specifically Path Well Traveled, right? That's a super powerful combination, but it's also good with a few other cards, right? It's good with the First Tenants, right? They turn it on, let you do a lot of damage off your blues. It's also it's really good with the boots. Like Spillover and the boots are a really good combination if you have chi. But then also something like Tidal Surge can go towards a Mystic strategy and be part of a bigger game plan, in addition to having single synergies. Or it can just be a fine blue in your deck. But it does all of these different things in a very unique way that I don't think other games have. In Flesh and Blood, one of the core like designs of the game that makes it so good is all the cards have such modality, kind of like Pheano was saying. All the cards can do a variety of different things. And Mistveil is the first time where it feels like they've kind of tapped into that, specifically with deck building. You get to put cards in your deck for multiple different reasons. You get to draft cards for multiple different reasons, and you get to use cards multiple different ways as the games play out. And it's just like, it feels like I'm drafting flesh and blood. I'm drafting the game that I fell in love with. And, the draft portion is also as good. Not just, how we all love CC. It feels like I get to do that in a limited space where you haven't really been able to do that before in Fab.
Yeah, I think pushing the power level of the Blues is the biggest thing for me. Like, they pushed it pretty far, but just short of like breaking CC.
Yeah.
What's that?
And no yellows as well as like kind of.
Oh yeah, I'm getting there too. But I think having push Blues that are powerful and you can build around them just adds so much consistency. But yeah, and then all the like overall format changes they did, like less yellows feels amazing. Like no one wants these cards.
Yeah.
What else did they do? I'm drawing a blank. 30 cards I think is a huge change because it's kind of miserable when you like it's why you're on rails when you're drafting, right? Because you need like 36 playables so you don't get fatigued every round. Like I think 30 cards is a huge change. All that stuff they did, I hope they push it forward. And I hope like the push blues and reduce yellows wasn't just for like thematics, because it was thematic for this set. I hope it's just kind of something they saw as like, this is how Flesh and Blood should operate in draft.
Another thing I really like about this set is the 30 card limit. I think kind of did this like under the waves type thing where it actually made equipment a lot better in kind of a unique way. In the past in Fab,
I was about to say that.
Like some equipment are like pretty fine, but the value of having just like an extra card in your deck for the fatigue games is so high that you'll often take it over that. But in this set, we see things like the Skybody equipment be really powerful, but also super draftable. You can take them early and you can take them before you have a lane because you're not going to bauble because you took an equipment early. And then it also makes the really powerful equipment feel a little bit offset as well. In something like Monarch, it felt like it was some classic equipment where literally like, I can't win games if I don't get a hooves. But if I have a hooves, my deck is insane. And this format felt like it had a good balance between that and something like heavy hitters, where some of the equipment were just kind of negligible, right? And it felt like we struck the mark where like equipment are not like Monarch, where they're all first picks slams, you need them in your deck, but there are really powerful ones that you want to take. And even the kind of medium ones are still pretty high priority. And you're allowed to take them without, risking your draft being unplayable. I think equipment is like another like core thing about Fab that Limited has kind of missed the mark with in the past that Misfell did really well.
Yeah, something with like equipment in the past was it felt like they should be like lands. Like, when you're drafting Magic and you get like a non-basic land in your pack and you're like, well, by me taking this, I get to add an extra card to my deck because normally I'm only taking, God, it's been so long. What is it, 23 cards in your deck normally?
Yeah.
I get to now have a 24th card in my deck where normally I'm going to be wasting all these picks. So me just getting another card in my deck actually increases the total value of my deck by quite a bit. But because you're going above 30 in most formats, that's not really a consideration. Where it's, if I take another card, it's the same thing. It's still another card for my deck where I'm, instead of throwing away a card, that 30 limit makes me value this more.
Yeah.
Just going back to the push blues really quick. I also think they like completely nailed U's design and like creating this tension of like, oh, I don't know if I should play this blue 5 attack in my deck. And like, as soon as they banish it, it's like, oh man, the clock's on. Like I got to kill them before they play this thing. I think they like completely nailed that. I think they kind of missed the mark for me in CC in that regard. Like I think it's a little too over the top and like in your face how like disruptive and oppressive she is. But I think in draft it's like so good.
Yeah,
really interesting gameplay.
Yeah, I agree. I think MST definitely the best draft we've had. Felt like it's like fixed bright lights for me. Is personally how I feel about it. But everything you guys said, I agree with. I think we're just going to move this straight to S tier for sure.
S plus.
S plus plus. It felt like I was drafting and playing Fab
at
the same time.
Okay.
Yeah.
If we add an F to move everything down, that's how much higher it is above everything.
It is how much higher it is than everything else.
This format's like beautiful and it is really nice and it like brings out the best of Fab, but like we could totally like have these types of things again. Like we're pointing out what we like about the format and they're very repeatable things. I think like this set is looking really good for Fab Draft in the future. We see just like out of the box things. They're not willing to just change the rules, which is something crazy like Magic in the past, right? they would just print different cards. But like, we're literally changing the rules of how draft works in order to make it better, which I think just shows like such a nice commitment. Like we see macros in the next set, and apparently those will be super important moving forward. Like, I don't know. I'm very excited for draft in the future, which is something that people have been bummed about in the past.
Agreed. Okay, next set we're going to talk about. Let's talk about Monarch. We've done that a little bit.
Ooh.
Straight F.
I'm going to start on this one. This is the set of without equipment, you auto lose the game. Is essentially you cannot 3-0 without your specialty equipment. Is basically how this draft works. If you don't see it, like moi at Nationals, even though I was the one of chain in my pod, and there were 0 chain equipment opened and 4 hooves for some reason.
Wait, you drafted chain?
Yeah, I was the old. I know. I was a one of chain. I was the one of chain.
Everyone on the team not to draft chain. You're like, all right, here's this like 19-page essay on how to draft chain, and the last line, don't draft chain.
Which is correct. Chain. But I was the only one, and I had to decide, am I going to be the third Levia, or I'm going to be the only chain? And so I went only chain and opened no equipment, and it was literally 0 equipment. And I saw four hooves come around, and I said, this pack coalition. And then I just like couldn't win games because everyone has specialty equipment, and I have none.
Anyway, format as a whole.
That is the format as a whole.
Yeah,
draft your specialty equipment or lose.
This was like one of those bell curve formats where like, when you've only played it like 3 or 4 times, like this is unplayable. Like I can't deal any damage. This sucks. And then like you play like 5 to 10 drafts. You're like, this is sick. I do all these cool like 20 damage turns each game. That's like what I'm playing towards. And then you played a lot. You're like, this is terrible. Like you have to get equipment. The games are just like usually blowouts. Like it's one turn that these decks are playing towards. And if they get to their 20 damage turn first, that sucks.
Which is funny because that's what MST kind of had going on also, right? Like a lot of MST was about like playing towards these big turns, but it felt better in that format.
You kind of had to work
for it. I think only New was really doing the big turns. Like Zen's just doing like 13 to 14 a cycle is the goal. And that's like high rolling.
You got them in Enigma also. Especially if you're drafting like the big Mystic deck.
How?
You just go like Tidal Surge, Path Well Traveled, Hero Ability, Swing, Droplet. And it's like game.
That sounds like 12 damage.
And now you're stuck blocking, and I have these auras in play.
Yeah, but it's not the same level as Monarch. It's not like if you have like a V turn with your like gloves V turn go.
Or Leviah going like 3 wide.
It's not Leviah going 3 wide exactly. It's not Chain if he actually hits his big turn and goes off. And it's not Herald spam, right? Like these are vastly different levels of power. Yeah,
I think Monarch was pretty bad. I think Monarch kind of like Outsiders is a victim of pack coalition and nat sucking. Like the format that people played Monarch for was nats. And it wasn't a perfect format, but when I would draft Monarch out of boxes, it actually felt pretty good. Like when it was reasonably consistent that you would get your equipment, it felt a lot better. Because when you do get your equipment, the format just feels like a little bit smoother. I think the class hat equipments, Halo or Talent, Halo and Ebenfold specifically, Halo is like the bigger offender. It's like
actually game winning. If you play the mirror and you don't have it, you just lost.
Yeah, it's a pretty huge deal. But I think the format was okay. I thought that although most of the games were like pretty boring, I thought that some of the games had some really interesting stuff going on, usually involving Chain or Leviah, and whether it was like your second cycle or whatever. But I thought that format had some interesting games where whether it was second cycle or setting up a very specific combo, you did actually have some interesting things going on. It's another set where like some of the best parts of MST feel like they're like echoed in past formats, and then they were capitalized upon later. But I think Monarch has some good to offer. I think it's probably like low C tier, but it's not unplayable, I think.
I will say I really enjoyed learning the format and like exploring it. But as soon as we finished learning, I hated it so much.
Yeah.
But it was very enjoyable to like discover like what's actually good. Like how do these heroes like get to their max potential?
The games are very satifying to win in Monarch, which is nice.
Yeah, you do have to do work. Like it's not just like, oops, you're dead.
Yep.
It's like
just like
for sure top of D tier for me.
Also, usually experience is pretty important. I found in Monarch. Like playing against inexperienced people on some powerful decks, like you still just like beat them because they don't know what they're doing.
Yeah,
But
the issue was that we played a tournament on this set.
Yeah,
sure. But it's also like you must be this tall to ride the ride type of format. Like you just like if you pick your seat and you don't see your equipment, like you just can't play you're not competitive. Like the games aren't real. They're not competitive. You just get ran over. Like, and there's nothing you can do about that. Like
what's also like Lucas was saying, like if you haven't played this format, you're gonna deal like 6 damage turn cycles. Like it's gonna feel terrible.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of the format was trying to figure out how to actually use all your cards, and it was very difficult.
Yeah, I remember playing against Boltons, and you just like look at I like look at hands with like 2 cards. I can throw an attack for like 5, and I'm like, I'm just gonna Arsenal. You're not gonna do anything. You're gonna attack me for 3 and pass.
I had sorry, go ahead, Cody.
No, you're good.
I had a weird experience with this format. Never gonna have this again. So it has a soft spot in my heart, of course, because Prism. But I went about this format very differently than normal, where I just refused to learn how to draft anything other than Prism. And I just sat down and said, I'm just going to play Prism every draft. I'm not even going to learn the others, so I'm not even tempted to switch lanes. And then be kind of vocal about the fact that this is what I'm doing. And just see what happens when I get into pods if people are going to go, he's the Prism guy. I'm just not going to draft Prism because he's just going to cut. And that did actually happen in one of my pods, which was interesting. No, actually both of my pods. 3 people downwind from me knew who I was, and they just went, I guess I'm not Prism. So I just like was completely free to my left to do whatever I wanted. But yeah, I think the thing that I actually really liked about the format the most was the like coming up with like a deck formula type of thing of like figuring out the exact, like, this is a perfect deck and using all these cards that you wouldn't normally think about using in decks and just kind of hammering that out. I thought that was really interesting, and like the navigating of the draft portion could be interesting because of that, of like, I
think it's actually
I found this. Well, I like when there's cards when I can take it that other. This is what I liked about Benji. Like I'm valuing cards in the pack differently than other people in the pod because what I want in my deck composition is different than what other people think they should have. So I'm going to get these cards for free.
I just think there were like such strict formulas that were like probably correct for this set. There just like actually were no archetypes unless you open majestic weapons. Like it was like, this is how you draft a hero. And yeah, it was like cool that we could maybe solve that puzzle better than others. I agree with that part, but I think like evaluating as a draft set, I think it's like a negative that it's like, it's actually just like a recipe that if you follow this, it's like the only way to do it correctly.
Sure.
If someone
I
asked me if someone asked me if I wanted to draft this set, I would tell them no. If someone asked me if I wanted to draft Tails, I would say yes. If they said, hey, do you want to do an Outsiders draft? I'd be like, yeah, do one more. It's been a while. Like, I'm cool. I'd be down with that. But if someone was like,
Arcane at this point.
Yeah, I just like, I never want to touch Monarch draft ever again. Like,
nope.
It for any reason. I think it should be D personally. I don't know.
It's like easy D for me.
I don't know, I'm biased.
Lucas?
I 6-0 Nationals. I felt like
also biased. I feel like it's C.
It's okay.
I don't put it as low as D.
Uprising.
But to me, it's the D of everything here should be D. That's like in C. Like all, it feels the same to me as the ones that are in C.
I mean, it being in D doesn't discredit your ability to 6-0 in the format. It's just like, it's still just a bad draft. Like it's not fun to draft. It's not enjoyable, and it doesn't feel like you're playing flesh and blood.
It doesn't feel worse to me than the ones in C. That's what I'm saying. Like it's
okay.
I think all of them are kind of shit for different reasons.
Way worse to me.
It feels way worse.
Like not close
as well.
I think it's fine. Yeah.
I'll put it at the bottom of C.
Oh.
Just for you guys. But at the bottom, it'll be below anything else in C.
All right.
Okay.
All right.
And next, let's just jump into Uprising then.
Yeah, I think Uprising's actually like I think Uprising is just like, I think Uprising is one of those old, like it's like an old head format. Like Dan and Pheano are like, this format was great.
I love Uprising.
They're like, this format's great. I forced the same hero in every tournament I played, and I did well.
What are you saying? I played multiple heroes.
Sorry. I
times.
forced some hero at every given draft, and then the games were really linear and kind of boring.
Okay, Worlds Day 2 Top Draft Pod. I switched out of Phi into Dromai after the wheel.
That's pretty.
And that was the only Dromai.
That was pretty.
Sweet. And I rolled everybody, not close.
I don't know. I mean, I think part of that might just be like.
I think it was deeper than people give credit. It's not the best draft set. I enjoy it because of the I think the gameplay was kind of unique, and like the power level of the cards was really high.
I just didn't.
That's really why I like it. I think it was extremely high power set. Yeah, I'm for sure biased towards Uprising. I didn't lose any rated draft games of the set.
Wait, really?
I don't think so. I went 6-0 at Nats and Worlds.
And Lil?
Did we? Oh, we did drafts in Lil. Okay, my bad. That was early set. Okay. Yeah, I went 4-2, I think, in Lil. I didn't really practice the set much then. But yeah, I don't know. I think the high power nature of the set is what I really enjoy. It kind of has the power level of Monarch, but I feel like it's more predictable, if that makes sense. It's not it's high power turn cycles instead of just spike turns. And I get to play Phi, and he's actually good and playable.
I think the set was fine. All 3 heroes could win, which is a big improvement for Fab at the time. And looking back now, that's still a good thing. All 3 heroes were draftable. I personally never drafted Icelander. I didn't like drafting Icelander. I played a lot of Dromai and I played a lot of Phi. And I thought it was fine. I did pretty well. As far as a Fab draft set, it is a generic Fab. It's as generic of a Fab draft set as you can have. You have to lock in relatively early. You're pretty much at the whim of your opponents in front of you passing to you, not just cutting you off and making a chaos draft because you can't adjust. And it just happened to also have that saved it a little bit is Icelander let you at least play the game on a different access sometimes when those things happened. But as far as
I found there were ways to influence or manipulate the draft process, which I enjoyed. It was kind of flexing a different muscle than we got in the other sets, where you could pass cut in strategic ways, or with how the packs break it down, right? There's 2 class commons or something like that. You can the person to your right took a Phi common. You could just also take a Phi common, and now it's what are you going to do? You're going to take generics and then take this random yellow Phi card later. But I agree. I think you summed it up pretty well. It's peak Flesh and Blood drafting used to look pretty good at being that.
Yeah, it's the best old way of Fab drafting, in my opinion. It's the best deck. It's the best set at old Fab draft, which old Fab draft isn't good, but it's the best version of that. Right?
That's how I look at it too. I agree. So maybe it is sadly a C+.
Yeah, I think the games were fine, and I just hated the draft portion. All the drafts that I had felt like I either got kind of lucky that my seat was correct-ish, or I got cut and then train wrecked. I hated that so much. Maybe I could have gotten better, but
I think it's the hero design that really saved the set. This was right when the professor started doing Flesh and Blood content. So we had Magic players looking at the game, and we have this cool flashy ninja who's very clearly Zuko from Avatar. We have this sick dragon play creatures deck, and then Icelander if you're into icy wizard stuff. I think that's what really it's kind of a staple set in my eyes because of the timing of it and just how iconic and well loved all the heroes were.
Yeah, I would say for me personally, I think I would put this probably below Outsiders.
Oh,
for sure. I think I would. But I'm willing to put it in B personally. I think it's.
I am not willing to put it in B.
I think it's more playable than
it's still Fab draft, and it's just Fab draft.
Yeah, for me, it's the best passable draft experience that we've had.
Yes,
but
Fab draft is
sure
C. You can't go past C for Fab draft. It's just really bad.
Yeah.
So I would do C. As far as the ranking in C, I think it's a better draft experience than Tails because it has 3 classes. But I I think personally it's a worse drafting experience than Outsiders.
I don't agree with you.
I don't agree either.
Where do you think it is?
It's
Top
for sure on top.
I was willing to put it in B. So
But
where
I'm
do you
biased.
think? I'm not biased. I don't actually like Uprising. Like,
It's for sure a C
I-
plus. Like, if we're saying C
Sure.
is like passable.
You think it's? I just don't think it's a better drafting experience than Outsiders, but that's fine.
well, Outsiders.
I think you'll get like a 50-50 split on that if you like survey the community. If it's
Like,
the community,
the-
I think it might even be Outsiders favored, but I like it.
I hated the draft portion and the games for Outsiders. Just the
Yeah, it's just like boring
if
for me.
like if I'm not Benji, I hated the games in Outsiders. I hated them. I'm either Arachne and just like ook. I hope I get there. Oh, I lost the coin flip. I guess I lost the game. Or I have Ranger bullshit and it just feels terrible. My deck just doesn't work sometimes.
I just think it's a little bit more interesting to draft. There's different strategies you can do. There's more heroes that you can draft. I think it made the experience better than basically every deck in this format has one way to draft it, with the exception of maybe Icelander has a second way to draft it. Sometimes
No, all the Draconic heroes could be like Phoenix Flame base.
They're basically the same way to draft. Hope you get good enough dragons for like Dromai. You can play a little fatiguey in some of your matches and try and draft some extra cards that way. But for the most part, they're all the same deck. Like there's little tweaks here and there to fix things, but they're the same deck.
Well, you could also do the Dromai where you're just like doing the 3-card 13 instead. Where you like, I'm not really.
Yeah, I didn't
focused
feel
on
that
dragons too
Outsiders
much.
like any different. But who cares? They're both like Alpha C, like whatever. You can choose the order.
I mean,
They are playable draft sets.
sure. Okay. Next draft set. Let's do WTR. Let's argue some more about if this is a good set or not. Who wants to go first?
I'll start. I think it's like better than all the other Fab draft formats. I think putting it in C or lower is kind of ridiculous to me. There's 4 heroes. They're all at least somewhat playable. They all have multiple archetypes. You can stay relatively open, and drafting them is fine. The gameplay is the most mind-numbing, Ira welcome deck ass, like just completely like me ooga booga because me ooga booga gameplay. It's not super interesting. There's a little bit of it sometimes has some interesting, like there is some depth because there are synergies and because second cycle comes up. Another thing that we've seen in later sets be more impactful, right? But like there are Slogism, Regurgitating Slog, there's Nimblism, Nimble Strike, there's Pummel synergies and stuff like Katsu randomly. Like there are things that work together, but most of the games are real boring. I don't know. I didn't love it. It's also really high power, but really low variance, which I think when combined makes for like, it's just like heavy hitters meta is what Welcome to Wraith is, where like you're both just doing good math and sometimes
there's one difference I'd say. The thing that I think that made the format like have some intrigue in the gameplay, and as well the draft portion of like you needed to define this in your draft portion, was finding ways to close games and find ways to prevent your opponent from closing games, because that was frequently a big part of the format. Like assuming you both players weren't just ooga booga, me no block, me only attack. Most games came down to I need to find a way to win this game. Some sort of damage evasion, or like I'm either going to Kadachi lock you, I'm going to dominate you, I'm going to attack react you, I'm going to shunt you. I'm going to find some way to kill you where you weren't ready to stop that from happening, and I'm going to shorten the game from the actual 20-point lifespan.
Yeah.
And then finding ways to play around that from the other side, because then it turns into the I know that you know that the format's about that, so then I'm supposed to play cards and pitch stack cards to stop you from doing that, or maybe I take one less point so you can't shunt kill me and things like that. I think that helped make the format a bit more interesting, because otherwise it just kind of feels like vanilla, throw shit at each other all game and nothing matters really. But
yeah,
It's playing Fatigue Katsu in this format every time, just and not even with any of the ninja cards. you're just 1/1/4, 1/1/5, block 2 cards, 1/1/5, 1/1/4. If you draft a couple of D-Reacts and you put a million cards in your deck, you just like beat everything.
Yeah. I think Welcome to Wraith would have been really good if we had some more time with it. Because I do think that there's like a lot of depth in the drafting and the archetypes. We just kind of never got it. And when most players experience, because let's be real, most players experience with Welcome to Wraith that are still playing the game are, at least this is mine and a lot of people I know, is they played the format a bunch and they played against people who were not as good as them. And so they won a bunch and the games were really easy to play. And so that's just kind of how you do it. Like, I could try to do some interesting stuff and make a new archetype, or I could just draft all the Bravo cards and have better numbers than them because they don't know what they're doing.
I do think the set's a little unproven at that point.
Yeah. I think the set belongs. I'd put it in like A tier with potential, or like B, where I think
that's too
absolutely
high.
not.
No, I think
I'm fine with B.
I think it's like
B.
This is the most B tier.
It's the most B tier draft deck.
Exactly, it's like good. It's pretty good.
I think it's like proven B, and I think if we had Welcome to Wraith draft,
I think it's unproven B. I'm suspicious it might be like Monarch, and it's actually like a C- in disguise.
I actually draft WTR every now and then. Like I actually did it a few weeks ago. I did it at one of the PTs. Someone just like had a box of WTR. We did it. Like I do it every now and then. Like I do WTR draft like a couple times a year. It's one of those sets like you were talking about earlier. Like if you asked me if I would play this draft set again, like Tails or whatever, like would I do it again? You're like, yeah, I'll throw maybe one random outsiders in just for nostalgia. WTR. If you ask me if I want to draft WTR, I'm always going to say yes. I'm not going to not enjoy my time drafting it. It's fun enough.
The farewell events are a good time.
I think it's
that was the best. They got to do that again. That was one of the farewell events and the Dusk Till Dawn pre-release. Those were two of my favorite Fab events they did locally.
Lucas, what were you trying to say?
Yeah, I think it's like B tier, but I could see it being C or A with more time given. Like it's deep enough that I think it could be A tier, and it's also kind of boring enough that I could see it being C tier.
Yep, agreed. Yep, I think B tier for Welcome to Wraith is a good spot for it. The notable thing about this set is it has 4 heroes in it. 3.5 of them are playable. Probably 4 of them. I think the Reinhardt is a little iffy on how playable it is, depending on how many people draft it. That's always kind of the odd one out. Every time I've drafted it,
I think it not being solved actually is to its benefit. Like it gets to maintain the rose tinted glasses forever a bit, because if we solved it, then it's forever solved. You know what I mean?
Yeah. But with that said, I agree.
I think one thing that brings a lot of these sets down, like lower than we have them, is that you can draft legendaries. Or is that not the case anymore? Was that errated?
No, I think if there was like a tournament WTR draft, you'd still be able to draft legendaries.
Oh, it's so gross.
Yeah, every set that you're allowed to draft legendaries loses points.
Yeah, but that's okay.
Okay, next set here. Let's do heavy hitters.
Dude, I just have this bias. Like immediately after playing a Pro Tour on a draft set, I just absolutely despise this set. Like I will not draft heavy hitters if you ask me
Bottom
to.
of B tier. This format is
I think
so...
in like a month I'll be down though.
No, I hate it so much. It's like we talk about all these sets like these are just like normal Fab sets. Like you're just drafting Fab. Heavy hitters feels like I'm drafting Fab, but like lower variance, or sorry, higher variance, lower agency.
It's also like lower fun somehow.
Yeah, like it's just so
like it's also boring. But it's so high variance. Like how do those two go together?
Yeah, like I just don't understand it. Like the whole idea of just like how heroes win games is just like warrior juices you once. That's how they win. Brute just kills you by blocking with the ones that are 3 and attacking with the ones that are a lot. And Guardian just blocks. It's just like nothing that any of the heroes do is like interesting. I think sometimes there's
I enjoyed when like you got the Guardian payoff, I will say.
Yeah, I think sometimes it was fun to do the things, but like it wasn't that powerful and it wasn't really interesting and the drafting wasn't really good. It has that
3 block slam.
Thing. Yeah, it has that annoying thing where like it has hybrid cards that aren't really hybrid cards. Like Agile Windup is like not a warrior card. Like it's just like not a card. Like you can put it in your deck. It's like a 3 for 7 or it's a blue. But like, come on, like get out of
this
here.
set really needed the 30 card limit too. I think.
30 card limit heavy hitters, I think would be maybe if there's a little more evasion as well. But
yeah, I mean, some other things might have to adjust, but like I don't know, the way it was implemented is just like you're desperate for every pick because you just have to be able to block.
Yeah. I owe 3.
I imagine. Cody, I imagine you have a soft spot for this set.
I think it's funny. I think if we went back 4 months ago, 5 months ago, we would say this is one of the best draft sets they've ever released.
We did.
And you know how I know that? Because we said that on podcasts, like publicly. So I think a little bit of the hate here is because of how much better MST is than heavy hitters. For a very long time, most of the draft sets kind of sucked. This was one of the first ones in a while that had all the heroes were basically playable. Even Rhinar was playable if you had to draft that deck. It's not great, but you could draft it in a way that made it like a good deck. And so, yeah.
No, it's very different.
It's better than Lexi.
Rhinar's more like draw. If your draw sequence is good as Rhinar, it's like actually nuts.
No, I think Rhinar is just Lexi, but the difference is that like you had to draft Lexi a lot, and you don't have to draft Rhinar a lot. Like I think there were like Lexi gems. Yeah, I think there were like Lexi gems that are like diamonds, but like there's like Rhinar decks that are pretty good, but like you just like don't have to be Rhinar. Like you would just.
I think this rewarded second cycle a lot as well in decision making in that aspect. There weren't a ton of different ways to draft the decks once people had gotten on top of it. I thought it was interesting at the beginning of the draft how the warrior strategy of just drafting blue block 3s in pack 1 was like a novel way to draft because it's not something we've ever done before. It is true. It's 100% a novel way to draft because it's never been relevant. I think you guys are hating on the draft.
Uprising was super relevant. Your blue block 3s are like super premium.
Only blue block 3s. That's all you're drafting basically in the first.
No, not to that extreme, but the premium was still there is what I'm trying to highlight.
Sure, but they were premium after your good red cards. This was before your good red cards close. In a lot of the cases.
Blue engage Swiftblade before red agile engagement.
Okay, so. But my point stands. I think you guys are looking at it like a little aggressively, considering literally 5 months ago we said it was one of, if not the best draft sets that had come out, and MSC is significantly better. It's like way better. But to say it's just like this format is terrible,
I think there's a distinction we need here.
Is a little ridiculous.
I think for competing in like tournaments, I think it's like solid B minus. I think for fun enjoyment, everything else, it's like C minus.
Yeah, I can get behind that. I think it's a fine tournament event.
If the next Pro Tour was heavy hitters, I would be super bummed. Like, I don't want to play, but I would, in terms of like performing well and like feeling like I have control over how my draft goes and all that, I would be happy about it.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good sentiment. A lot of these like C tier, I think some of them are like a lot of fun. Like Uprising's a lot of fun sometimes. Like Outsiders sometimes a lot of fun. Tails, you can do some cool stuff. Monarch, you can have some really powerful turns. Heavy hitters is like maybe competitive integrity is higher. Maybe there's a little bit less variance with some things. You don't train wreck as much, but it's so boring. Like we keep bringing this thing up where like somebody asks you like, do you want to play heavy hitters draft? Fuck no, I do not want to play heavy hitters draft.
I don't think that's a real question. We drafted it a million times. We just got done drafting it. We'd have to re-ask. Yep. We'd have to re-ask that question in 2 years, and then see, would you like to redraft a heavy hitter?
I say Cody should rank this one because we're clearly compromised.
Like you guys are hating on it so much when 5 months ago, this is one of the best draft formats we've ever had.
But it was.
I don't think it's as bad as you two are making it out to be. I just think it's kind of boring. Like that's my biggest gripe. It's just the draft is playable. The games are fine. Like I have no complaints about the set. There's nothing that's like glaringly bad. Where like a lot of the sets in the C, it's like there's a glaring issue in some portion, either that the draft is bad or the games are bad. There's some area that's just like makes it terrible. I don't feel that with heavy hitters. It's just kind of boring. And I would agree with that. It's like, it just feels like worse Monarch. Or not Monarch. Welcome to Wrath to me.
Yep.
It's just
I'll trust
same set,
It's D tier in my heart, but I trust
it's bottom of B tier for me. I think it is a good draft set. It was one of the draft sets we got finally that didn't have a major, huge flaw in it. The huge flaw was it's kind of boring, but that was like novel and exciting because all of the other draft formats had something just fundamentally broken in them.
I'd say
like they just didn't function as a draft.
Is the flaw.
A couple of cards
like every
stuff I don't like
a coin flip.
Yeah, I agree. It could have been better. I think if they had looked at some of the cards that were in the set and adjusted how some of the cards they put in, they could have made the format a little bit nicer. I'm thinking of cards like
not to defend
things like that, but yeah.
Not to defend it, but like I think that's why those effects exist in the set. The set is, as we're saying, it's kind of boring. If you exclude the RNG moments from the set, now it's actual paint drying. Like what are we doing here? We're just let's flip over our cards and just count up who has more number and decide who wins based on that. Like there's nothing going on if you remove the RNG.
Like you're playing like a deck builder instead of counting like VP. You're just counting like attack total on all your attack actions, and then
and defense.
Yeah, and defense.
Yeah.
My attack minus. I'm net plus 20. What are you? Plus 19.
Yeah, I do agree though. If we're playing a tournament, I'm picking heavy hitters over everything below it without a question. Like
I also have to say there's a lot of skill in the gameplay that we've kind of not talked about or overlooked. Obviously, when you're going to like Pro Tour or something, it makes a little bit of a difference there. But like when you're going to Pro Quest, or that was a season that we played it in, or even going to Nationals, and you have to draft the set. There's a lot of skill in the actual gameplay section. It felt like I sat down, I was going to win a majority of my games, like that I was going to play with almost any deck that I drafted, and that was enjoyable. It was very enjoyable to feel like I could transition my knowledge into wins. And the set did it very well.
Comes in.
I was gonna say
sometimes it says your 5-card hand just lost go again.
Yeah, I definitely felt like that. And then I played Pro Tour and I 0-3'd with a pretty good deck. And it just felt like
I had more of a problem with what you're saying, Dan, in the sealed format. I think draft that happened to less often. Like you had moments of that, but like almost every single game I played of sealed with this format, the game was decided on that. Who
Oh yeah, I remember that now.
Just who got shit on first by their deck. Oh, yep. I guess you lose the game. The sealed felt unplayable to me. That was some of the most miserable sealed I've ever played.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I just I go and look back at like obviously I have I had a great experience on the set. I got second at a calling drafting the set. I have a game that anyone could go watch where I opened 4 reds. Couldn't even arsenal a card and still won the game. Like that stuff happened, but I felt like you could get more punished in MST for having like a full red hand, unplayable hand than I did in heavy hitters. Because at least I could, I could do other things because it was so Dow powered, in one aspect. So a little bit different, I think.
All right, let's move on.
Sure.
Bright lights.
We only have one left. It's bright lights. There is no picture for it here. I'm just going to grab Crucible and say it's bright lights.
Crucible looks too much like the other ones. Do Everfest.
Fine. I'll do Everfest.
F.
Whatever. Oh, I think it's like for sure B plus, top of B, not close.
Add a tier.
I'd put top of B as well. I think that Bright Lights is kind of weird where like I think that the games for Bright Lights are much worse than every other format, Arcane Rising included.
Well, hold on. I think sometimes they are good.
Sometimes they are good, yes. Specifically when
there are very good games that can be played.
Specifically when Dash.io is involved, I think some of the games get really interesting, and some of the games are really sweet. And there's a lot of technical gameplay, and there's pitch stacking and game planning involved, and then your opponent flips a boom grenade after they boosted it, the game's over.
Didn't you just say that sometimes it's interesting when it's a Dash.io game and then complain about a Dash.io card?
No. I'm saying like the games are
it's
really
interesting when you're the Dash.io and you flip the boom.
Sure. I think all the Dash.io games are not interesting at all. Those are the ones that are not interesting because it's so variant. I think the Teclomir is super interesting personally.
Yeah, I just think like every game there's so much technicality and so much like intricacies with the games, and then like half of them don't matter at all. Like half of them is like me have Terminator tank, and or you're just like me flip boom grenade. Oh, me play max. Oh, boost away win condition. Oh no.
Yeah.
Like
For all the reasons that you guys said that you hate heavy hitters, that's why I hate bright lights. And it feels like that set took it to a more of an extreme than heavy hitters did, where your boring games are even more boring, and your high variance games.
I think the tech
and your high variance games are more high variance. You boost your own. You boost your win con. You're like, fuck me, I guess. Oh, I still have one more overpower left in the deck. I still have a way to beat this Teklo, and I boosted the other overpower. I guess I die.
It feels like fake a lot of the time. Like the games, it doesn't even feel like I'm like doing what I want to do. Like you play the Teklo mirror, and I'm like, it's not even fab. Like I remember watching like games. I would talk to people about the format, and they're like, "Oh, I played the Teklo mirror," and they're like, how'd it go? And they're like, "I played the Teklo mirror. I lost." And I'm like, "Did anything interesting happen?" They're like, "No, I played the Teklo mirror. Of course, nothing interesting happened. I blocked, and then I played Evos, and then I swung my weapon." It's like,
sure. I think that's sometimes that happens. I agree. I think the Teklo mirror was mostly about tracking your opponent's pitch stack and then knowing how to line up your pitch stack so you could take advantage of the shitty cards that they had to put in their deck, and you could take advantage of those hands. And that's like how most of
boring.
I think that's super interesting and super skillful.
My favorite matchup was playing Max against Teklo. Like I love beating the fatigue deck with like overpower or whatever I have to do, or fatiguing them with Crank and Bank. Like, oh,
Crank and Bank.
But that was only interesting if you both got armor, in play at relatively the same time. If one Teklo just went like armor, and then like you couldn't play the game, and that's like the variance part that I hated, then I agree. Yeah, this mirror's terrible. They just went 3 armor pieces. And then I went 1. But if you both kind of go at the same rate, and now you're actually playing your whole deck against their whole deck, I thought it was very skillful and very interesting. I thought the Dash.io games were fun to play as Dash.io, except for when you drew all items and then you're just like, get ran over. I can't block. I guess I lose. But sometimes you just like roll people. Yeah, the variants in these games are terrible. It is one of the worst variants play formats I think we've ever had. But the drafting of this format was phenomenal. I love physically drafting this set. Is so enjoyable.
Okay, you could play all 3 heroes. You could play all 3 heroes in pack 3, which is like crazy. Like Fab's never been able to do that. Even like
MST.
Even then, it's kind of a stretch. You can do it, but even then, that's like a very specific strategy of me take generic. But like in Bright Lights, like I had a draft. It was at Shane's house. It was with like me, UNG, Shane, Michael, Brody, all of them. And I flip over my deck after pack 3, and I'm like, what do you guys think I should play? And it was like, it was really, I like 2-1 that draft as well. It was pretty sweet. But I thought like actually drafting it was so cool. Like the Majestics, a lot of them felt like build-arounds and like game plan arounds, which is really interesting. We haven't had that in a while. And just in general, Majestics are usually too bomby or terrible. The equipment I thought was pretty reasonably balanced. Like all the heroes were open. You had to like have sideboards for all the different heroes, which is interesting. MST kind of does this as well, where it's like, I need blues for new. But in this, it's like, I need an extra overpower for Teklo, but I also need an extra boost card in the mirror. If you're playing Dash, you need, sometimes you want that item that recycles itself, whether it's Medkit or the other one, Steam Canister. But like, I thought that there was like so much like small little details in drafting that were super, super important that have just like not been seen outside of MST and Bright Lights, where like this one pick of pick 7, pack 2 is like critical to how your draft goes, and it could go either way. Of course, you could play the games and none of it could matter because you just boost that card away.
Yeah.
But like, we don't, it feels,
the hack gets it back. It's fine.
Yeah, it feels like it should be rewarding. Sometimes the games kind of take it away, though.
This is the set that I want to draft and then not play my games. It's like how I feel about it.
Yeah, I just want to compare decks. Like, I think mine's better than your guys's.
Yeah.
I feel like for like casual scene, I want to play
19.
Yeah.
That's all fair. I'm remembering now, this was the season I had to skip. So I only played this at like locals.
Yeah. All right, let's
I think the exploration of the format also was pretty interesting. Like when we were trying to figure out how the hell to like get certain decks to function at the first couple weeks, I thought that was really interesting. like dash. Remember when we were exploring that like weird dash archetype at the beginning?
Oh, like 20
Yeah,
That
items.
was super fun.
The unplayable fatigue deck. No, 20 items was broken, dude. I 2 1-day 1 with 20 items. I drew 14 items in a row in my round 3, so I lost. But
awkward.
The Evo dash deck.
that deck was sweet. That was the deck that I turned over, and I was like, "What am I playing?" I have like 5 Evos, like 7 items. I'm like, I don't know. You guys,
That's cool. Yeah. I love shit like that where you can like, oh, let me do this weird exploration in the format. Like,
yep.
That's not how it's meant to be.
I think that it deserves B for that reason, because the C tier decks I think are not quite as bad to play, or C tier formats, but like the games are still kind of not amazing. Bright Lights, the games might be a little worse, but the drafting and the format is so ahead, I think. It's just like such a trend in the right direction. I just can't lump it in with these other terrible draft formats.
I agree.
If we were doing draft side only, I would say easy A, maybe S, but easy A.
Yeah.
But if you put the other one in, I agree. Bottom of B is kind of probably the best that a Bright Lights can do. Yeah. Okay, so that is going to be our tier list. The only S tier for now is MST. We'll see how Rosetta goes. Nothing in A. B tier is going to be Welcome to Wraith, and then we're going to have Heavy Hitters, and then we're going to have Bright Lights. C is everything else but Arcane Rising, which is D. So there we go. That feels pretty accurate to me. Okay, let's go into some podcast questions. These questions are asked by premium members of our Discord. If you would like to be able to ask questions, watch our videos, look at tournament reports, ask us any questions directly, find people to practice with, feel free to join in the link below. The first question is from Renzo, and it says, you guys were telling us on the last podcast that we were testing some Riptide, Pablo's list. How do you guys feel about the list in the current meta? And have you made any changes to the list or added anything from the armory?
I can start, and then I'll let you guys take over. I know me, Cody, and Dan have all done some rip-tiding. We've been ripping some tide. I think the list is pretty sound. I think there's a couple slots that are really flexible, like Pablo's playing Warmonger's Diplomacy, Pablo's playing red headshot, blue headshot, things like that. And I think those spots could potentially move around a little bit depending on the meta. I think potentially the weapon choice is something you can mess around with. I think you could try out Death Dealer for some matchups. And then from the new Armory deck, the Pump obviously is pretty good in Riptide because of the hero ability. Lets you put an aim counter on something like Murky Waters, which can be really, really good. 10 Dominate with an on-hit, basically draw one of the best cards is really, really good. And then I haven't messed around with it personally, but I could see the new aim counter equipment being good as well in a more aggressive version than Pablo's. Although I think, interestingly, you don't have to be that much more aggressive to use it. I think you can be marginally more aggressive and still be in a pretty good spot. But I think Riptide's really good. We kind of talked about it on the last pod. He's pretty reasonable into Zen. He's very good into New. And then he has unique play into a lot of other matchups. Like even some of the trickier ones like Prism and Enigma, you can at the very least skill check your opponent. And you can also, skill flex on your side, which I like. So I think Riptide's pretty reasonable. Like I mentioned last week, there's a bunch of exploration for him as well. So I would recommend trying the new cards, trying Pablo's list, messing around with it, playing a bunch of different builds. Riptide's sweet.
Not really anything to add. I think it lines up pretty well in the current meta.
Yeah.
As well.
Probably worse next meta.
Yeah, probably worse next meta.
You have a tiny bit to add. I think.
Don't worry about that.
I think first Pablo and his team are pretty smart. Like traps are so good in this meta. Like great against Zen, and then all the decks that are attacking Zen, like your traps are super relevant. So I think Riptide is a great choice. Line It Up has been like such a house in the deck. Like, I played a few games against Victor recently, and like if I don't have Line It Up in the deck, I have no idea how I'm supposed to ever beat them. Like it's the only form of invasion we have access to now. Like Line It Up into what's the one you said?
Murky
Lucas?
Waters.
A Market Waters. It's such an insane play. Like it's 3-card 10 Dominate that like you're going to draw a trap too. Like that's such high value. And they all block 3. So like if you have to block, you can do that. That's just like been the engine that I lean on against like other defensive decks. Like I just loop that 2-card play as many times as I can. So that's been cool. I've been trying to do what Lucas is saying, which is like, how do I get a little more aggression into the deck? Every time I try, though, I just fall back to defensive. So we'll see.
Okay. Question here from Kraft. It says, do you think that having more experience with a tier A or B hero is better than having a passing understanding of an S tier hero?
Depends on the
I
gap.
think it depends on the. I also think it depends on the format. I think some formats have rewarded that more than other ones. Like, I think you could get away with that a little bit during the Outsiders format of just like kind of playing whatever, the Heavy Hitters format. I think the Heavy Hitters one was a good example of just play the deck that you're good at. Because the gap in power between decks is so much closer. So like
Worlds as
you
well.
playing in
less heroes world.
Like you playing an S tier hero doesn't matter when the difference between S and A and B is like this big, where like you knowledge gapping your opponent on an interaction is worth that value difference.
Yep, agreed. It is format dependent. I think like the Lexi meta, you're probably better served just playing Lexi in almost all cases, unless you had like a dedicated game plan for Lexi. Same with like, Starvo is like pick one of the three, right? That you know the best and play one of those. So,
but yeah.
Okay. But yeah, I think that's really what it is. I think in a healthy format and how the history of Fab has been, most of the time it's play what you know. And then occasionally it is play what is the best of the upper bracket. Learn or get to know one of those ones. Right?
Yeah, I think the big thing is in Fab, I think it's usually not defensible if you're trying to get the best results. If all you care about is like, I want the best results, it's not defensible to play like a tier 2 to worse hero, I think usually. But I think like maybe like top of whatever your B tier is, and then like A tier, S tier, of most of those heroes, it's usually fine. Like right now between like Prism, New, Zen, I guess that's really it. But like you look at like heavy hitters, kind of like Pheano was saying, like all the Warriors, Brutes, Guardians, Dromai, Azalea, like all those decks were fine. Just play one of them. I am usually an advocate of don't venture too far out of what the good decks are. Don't play a bad deck because you think it's good. Because you think you're good on it. But yeah, when you're talking about all the different good decks, just playing any of the good decks is usually fine.
I think the only exception to that would be your bad deck is very good in a gem roulette situation and you're willing to roll the dice.
Yeah, that's fine.
I don't like doing that, but
if you have like a reason for playing a deck, like if you're taking like a Riptide or Uzuri and you're like, this is what I want to target and beat, that's fine. But I wouldn't take like, what's a tier 2? I wouldn't take Hatchet Dory to this tournament because you feel good on it. Like the deck sucks. Like you don't have a plan. Like play New, dodge Zen, dodge a bunch of stuff. Like just play a good deck with a reason. And if you have a specific reason for playing Hatchet Dory, that's one thing. But like if you're between Hatchet Dory and Zen and you're like, I'm going to play Hatchets because I know what I'm doing, figure it out. Like play more games with Zen. Like, I don't know what to do. Like you're in the wrong timeline, brother. Like,
yeah. You missed the boat. Okay, next question from Millen says, what is the city/country in Europe that you would like to visit next for Pro Tour?
Amsterdam.
Poland.
No, absolutely not.
I don't
Poland.
Maybe.
No, Poland. Yes.
Slam.
I was saying no to Amsterdam. I do not want to go back to Amsterdam.
I had a really good time in Amsterdam.
It was really expensive and the food was mid. We've covered this.
Aside from the expensive food,
Poland. Poland, I agree with 100%.
So I've realized I've only traveled internationally for Flesh and Blood.
Mm-hmm.
So Poland's at the top of my list too. I'm like mostly Polish. I don't speak Polish, which disappoints a lot of people, but I feel like the need to like visit and like learn more about my culture or the culture of my family, I guess.
If we're just choosing like the coolest place and we're answering the question normally, it's got to be like Iceland or something.
I want to go to Liverpool. Liverpool's like the top of my top.
Oh, yeah.
That's because I've been a Liverpool football club fan.
I don't want to say I don't like the United Kingdom because like that's not true, but I hate it there. And I never want to go back.
Really? Oh, I like London a lot.
I was in there. Same. I was in there. I was there for like 8 hours, and it was the worst 8 hours of my life.
It's to be fair,
sounds like Amsterdam for me.
To be fair, for our European fans who are listening, the reason he is saying this is because he had a 1,000,000-hour layover and got stuck then in the
Maybe I'll
UK
do
for
a
even an
story.
additional amount of time. So it was like a
Maybe
40 hours on a round of plane. So
maybe I'll do the like violently sick, hadn't eaten in 26-hour story time for why I live. London was not the best, but
Yeah.
My wife's
you
coming
guys-
for the next one, so we're hoping for Italy or Greece, somewhere like
Italy.
I actually
Little
really
vacation.
Italy's one of the places I want to go to. Italy, Ireland. Now Japan was one of my bucket list places I need to go to. So now it's just Italy, Ireland.
I like how we're just
Poland
saying
that I'm like,
countries.
I just don't
Yeah.
care. I just want to. I don't give a shit. Like whichever
I'll go back to
one-
Lille too. I would.
I was going to say
like
that
do
too. I would love to go back to Lille. Like, I like having the spots that I know to go to that I like really enjoyed, and I had a lot of good spots in Lille.
Yeah,
I'd like
Lille
to
was
go
great.
Gelato?
Gelato.
Oh, I didn't have any. Did I miss out?
Yes.
yes.
No.
That was the best gelato of all the gelato I've had in
Oh.
Europe. That was the best gelato. Was in
24
Lille.
scoops. That was
Wait,
my
I
hold
don't
on.
think I wasn't an ice cream enjoyer at that time.
You're prefacing in Europe. You've had better gelato than Europe?
No.
Okay. This
I mean, it's just always better. Okay, next question here from Mativs. It says, how do we foresee MST heroes performing in the ROS era? Zen will still be the best deck, unfortunately,
Well,
unless
yeah.
nerfs happen.
Yeah,
Yeah.
if they don't hit
Yeah.
Zen, like I just can't imagine. I think Aurora maybe has some play because she can just like present on hits
Yeah.
and just draw a million cards. But like that's still you just have to like high roll. I don't think banish 8 cards from my graveyard and pray I'm not dead, but before the time I have a hero ability is like I cannot imagine any of the new heroes have a good matchup into Zen.
I could
And that-
foresee the Lightning Wizard potential. Like if the Lightning Wizard is super pushed combo deck,
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah, fair.
Sure.
There
I'm like-
are avenues that could happen.
Yeah.
We just with
It's
what
just-
we've seen right
it-
now, it doesn't look like it.
Especially because Brian talked on a podcast. He was like, Rosetta's power level is not as high as MST. And since the heroes don't have, in my opinion, things that look like they line up super well into Zen, if you're not as powerful, then you're not getting the job done. I think they could have really interesting play into new on like a bunch of different axes. So like maybe that's fine and she can stay in the format. But Zen, I just cannot imagine being allowed to exist.
Yeah, like
For
on
the group-
Asalia, it would have to be more pushed than Kano, right? Like
Yeah.
Kano's barely like some people think it's favored into Zen.
It's
Yeah,
definitely
they're
not.
wrong.
But-
Please don't push a wizard more than Kano. Like, please.
Yeah.
But that's the only universe that I see it having play. Like in a world where the Lightning Wizard, Isilia, is that the name of it? If you can like main phase OTK someone, because it seems like maybe that's the direction they're going with it, of like a main phase wizard or something like that. Sure. Yeah, like the arcane
Actually,
damage
every
decks.
wizard operates in the main phase because the main phase is the only time where players have priority. So,
You're right. All phases are the main phase for the wizard. But like Zen lines up poorly into arcane damage because it doesn't give him a chance to use his armor. So like if there's a hero that could have play, maybe it's that one. But I don't see it unless it's like
I think
ridiculously
it's about
pushed.
Yeah, I think it has to have like arcane on hits that punish Zen for playing 30 blues. I don't know.
I'm hopeful, but like they gotta murder him, man. Zen's time's up. He's gotta
Yep.
go.
To be fair, I'm hopeful that once we actually see the whole set and we see all the pieces, that there's things that you can put together that you can combat the meta and you combat Zen. It's just like I can't imagine what that has to be yet, and I don't have to. I'm not making the game.
I don't
but
really want to live in a world where those things.
That's where I'm at.
That's-
Like, I'm
that's-
afraid
that's-
of whatever that is.
that's what I was getting to, and I would be a little worried if something just like popped out and was just like, "This is better than Zen" straight up, and like
I mean,
murders him.
It would have
I'd
to
be a
be
little
more
worried.
disruption than new or more damage than Zen.
Yeah.
Like I don't want to play the game if either of those things. exist.
There is a potential for a more fatiguey deck that could
Sure,
that
sure.
could
With
be
like life gain. Yeah.
that's with life gain or with something else. There's potential with it. Yeah.
Fatigue and like ridiculous, like Lexi level on hits where like I'm just forcing you to block or I'm unreasonably valuable.
No,
but
the
it's
Earthers
fine.
might have a chance.
Yeah, like I think Lucilio specifically, if he has arcane on hits, maybe there's something there. Like Pheano said, if you can deny the armor block and force through on hits, maybe you have a shot. But
Yeah, it could
no.
just be like multiple rounds of saying, hey, here's 5 and you don't get to do your funny turn? Like, what if it was like 5 and you can't play cards from Banish, like a Herald of Judgment style?
Lightning could stun in theory, right?
Yep.
Just like multiple rounds of like, stop. Okay, I've chipped
like,
you enough.
Zap.
Now I can OTK you. Like, I got you to the threshold that I can kill you.
In conclusion, please hit Zen cards.
I do trust that either there's something that will change the meta or they will change the meta.
Yeah, I will say this. I see a world where new is still playable because there's more than just Zen in the set.
Yep.
I see a world where new is still a playable deck. I do not see a world where Enigma is still playable. Enigma's not playable now, but like it does not feel like with the addition of more arcane, is it going to make her more playable than it was previously? The only thing that would make her more playable is if they killed Zen, and then she's probably not even that good. But we'll see. Okay. Next is from Ham, and it says, "How do you shuffle your deck?" Nice simple question.
There's tutorials online. I don't want to waste real time because I
swear to God, if there's no question from Cusco this week, I'm gonna lose it.
Well, I think he's asking, or they're asking, what your preference for shuffling is. Like, how do you do it?
Right.
Not how to shuffle.
How do you personally shuffle your deck?
Oh, okay. I was confused.
Lucas.
I'm not very good at shuffling, so I just do like the standard.
All right, shuffle cards. Go to the next question.
And then I do like a slide.
Lucas, you're not allowed to shuffle a deck. We do not want to listen to all of the shuffling of all of the cards.
All right, next question.
Here, I'll mute.
No,
I do that, and then I shuffle half. Cody taught me that, and then I put it together, and then I just shuffle until I'm out of time to shuffle.
Sure.
I don't usually pile.
I don't.
But
I
sometimes
don't pile. I don't bridge. I don't riffle shuffle unless it's sealed.
I would if I was good
I don't
at
mind. Yeah. Oh, I just don't want to bend the cards.
Yeah.
Because I single sleeve, so I'm not gonna bend the cards like that. Okay. Next question from Sam is, how do you guys feel about the continuing of shoehorning high amounts of variants like the new Sigil of Arknight and Sigil of Temporal Manipulation? How do you feel about high variance cards continually being added to decks?
Depends on the impact.
I think it depends on like how playable these cards are and like what their role is in these decks. If they're like Ancestral Harmony, where it's like you're always good and you have the potential to win the game, that's pretty messed up. But if they're like it's always serviceable and you have the potential to go like pretty plus, but like not unreasonable, I think it's okay.
I think it's pretty simple. Like going +1 card is fine. Going +2 cards is like probably not okay. Going +3 cards is like, what are we doing here?
Yeah. I mean, the new sigils look to have some sort of synergy, and then sometimes you draw a card with them. Whatever. You get like 1 to 2 points of synergy, probably. Maybe you get 3, and then you draw a card and it's pretty good, but you're blue 0-cost instants and non-attacks with go again. Like, you're not super powerful. But if we see cards more like Harmony that are like super high variance and swing games a lot in either direction, that's probably becoming a problem. Like if people were playing Tome of the Arknight every single game, maybe that's a little tricky.
Yeah, I hate Tome of the Arknight. I think that's just a poorly designed card. But it's old. Yeah. Good answer, I think. Ronco asks, in reference to Cody's latest Twitter post, what is his relationship status with Enigma? I will say that
it's complicated.
It's complicated. It's real simple. I wish I didn't like playing Enigma because I'm not allowed to play Enigma because every time I load this deck up, I win a handful of my matches, and then there's several matches that say you don't get to play the game. And I don't quite enjoy playing where my deck's just invalidated by like 3 cards in someone else's deck. Or because Zen exists. With that said, I have an Enigma deck that I can beat Zen with. I just can't beat anything else in the game. So not really super helpful and a big waste of time. I think that is all of our questions. Thanks for sticking with us. I know this was a longer one, but I had a lot of fun talking about draft stuff. I actually kind of want to go draft. I'm not going to, but I wish I was going to go draft stuff right after this. But goodbye, everyone. See ya.
Bye, guys.
Where's my question, Cusco?
Yeah, we're getting rid of the envelope
7
here, but
envelope.
What we could do here is go ahead and play the envelope.
All 3 pitches of envelope and darkness.